When I agreed to pretend to be Adrian Blackwell's girlfriend, I thought I was making the worst mistake of my life. He was known in the city as the cruelest millionaire alive, ruthless in business, cold to everyone who crossed his path, and utterly incapable of love. Rumors swirled that he fired employees for breathing too loudly in his office and that he'd once thrown a crystal glass at a waiter for bringing the wrong brand of wine. So when his assistant approached me with the strange proposal, pose as his girlfriend for a month in exchange for a generous paycheck, I laughed in disbelief. But the reality of my empty bank account, overdue rent, and sick younger brother made the choice less of a joke and more of a desperate necessity. Against every warning voice in my head, I accepted. Our first meeting was unforgettable. He arrived in a sleek black car, his presence sucking the air from the room the moment he entered. His gaze was sharp, like he could read every weakness in me, and when he extended his hand, I hesitated before taking it. "Remember," he said with a voice smooth but commanding, "this is business. Nothing more. You smile when I tell you to, laugh when I say something amusing, and above all, you do not embarrass me." His words felt like shackles, but the glimmer of challenge in his eyes made my heart beat faster. I told myself I could endure his arrogance for 30 days. The first public appearance was at a gala where everyone whispered about his mysterious new girlfriend. Dressed in a gown he had sent, far more expensive than anything I'd ever touched, I felt like an imposter walking beside him. His arm was firm around my waist, his expression unreadable, but every time I faltered under the weight of the cameras, he leaned in just enough to steady me. To the world, he played the part of a man in love, and shockingly, he played it well. That night, as we left the ballroom, I caught a flicker of something in his eyes, loneliness, maybe. Or was I imagining it? Days turned into weeks, and the cruel millionaire I'd expected wasn't always the man I found. Yes, Adrian was harsh, impatient, and sometimes cutting with his words. But in stolen moments, I saw another side, him quietly covering me with his jacket when the night air grew cold, or the way his jaw softened when he listened to his mother's old piano records in the library. He never admitted vulnerability, but pieces of it slipped through the cracks, and against my will, I began to treasure them. My role as his fake girlfriend became the highlight of my days. I laughed at dinners, shared secrets in hushed voices, and even argued with him like we were something real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt alive, like I was part of a story bigger than myself. But reality loomed like a shadow. This was still a contract, still a game with an expiration date. And though I was living the best days of my life, I knew that when the deal ended, so would we. The closer the contract's end drew, the heavier my heart became. I told myself to enjoy the illusion while it lasted, but every stolen glance and unspoken moment blurred the line between pretense and truth. Adrian had a way of disarming me without even realizing it. One evening, after a long charity event, he drove us to the edge of the city instead of his penthouse. We ended up at a quiet viewpoint overlooking the glowing skyline. "Do you ever wonder," he asked softly, staring at the lights, "if all of this means anything? Or are we just playing roles until the curtain falls?" For the first time, the cruel millionaire didn't sound cruel at all, he sounded human, broken, and achingly lonely. Without thinking, I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. That night, I knew I was no longer pretending. But not everyone believed in our charade. One of his business rivals confronted us at a dinner, mocking my background and calling me a charity case Adrian had picked up to polish his image. My cheeks burned, and for a moment, I expected Adrian to let the insult slide. After all, protecting me wasn't part of our deal. But to my shock, he stood, his voice dangerously calm. "Say one more word about her," he warned, "and you'll regret it." The room went silent. In that instant, I saw not the ruthless tycoon but a man who cared, fiercely and without hesitation. Later, when I whispered why he did it, he only muttered, "Because you matter more than you realize." My heart twisted, knowing the contract was a cage around something that felt too real. The final week was torture. Every day carried a bittersweet weight, each laugh a reminder it could be our last. Adrian seemed restless too, his temper sharper in meetings, his silences longer when we were alone. On our last official night together, he surprised me by taking me to his private estate by the ocean. We walked along the shore, the waves crashing against the rocks, and he finally turned to me with eyes that betrayed the steel facade he always wore. "This was supposed to be business," he admitted, voice low, "but somewhere along the way, I forgot where the act ended. And I don't want it to end." My breath caught. It was everything I wanted to hear, but fear lingered. Was this just another performance, or was it real? I didn't get the chance to ask. The next morning, a tabloid splashed headlines across the city: "Millionaire's girlfriend exposed as paid imposter." My world crumbled. Paparazzi swarmed, calling me a fraud, and worse, they claimed I'd manipulated Adrian for money. I packed my bags, ready to disappear before he could throw me out. But before I reached the door, he appeared, holding the very contract that had bound us together. Without hesitation, he tore it in half. "This paper doesn't define us," he said, stepping closer. "You do. And if you'll let me, I want you by my side. For real this time." Tears stung my eyes as the walls I had built finally collapsed. I had walked into his life as a hired actress, terrified of the cruel millionaire. But I was leaving with a man who had shown me love in the most unexpected ways. The deal had ended, but our story was just beginning. And as he pulled me into his arms, I realized something I never thought possible: sometimes, the best days of your life come disguised as mistakes you were too afraid to make.